Lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
For decades, the world has been utterly captivated by Princess Diana's life and her powerful legacy. Her incredible compassion, her natural grace, and that unbreakable bond she had with the public truly made her the people's princess. But behind that glamorous public image was a mom who cherished her children more than absolutely anything. Now, after so many years shrouded in secrecy, a long-lost letter from Diana to her oldest son, Prince William, has just surfaced. The big question is, what did she need him to know? Stick with us as we finally uncover the shocking contents of Princess Diana's lost letter to Prince William and expose the secrets it holds. Diana's private letters. The whole story began quietly, almost without anyone noticing, inside a London auction house catalogue back in July 2004. There weren't any flashy headlines and definitely no major announcements. It was just a simple listing of handwritten letters from the late Princess Diana. But make no mistake, these weren't just any old letters. They were incredibly personal, giving us a rare, unfiltered look into her private life. And among that collection, one specific letter stood out right away. It was about her eldest son, Prince William, and it was written in a way that showed just how deeply she adored him. The auction organised by SS showcased Diana's personal letters to Violet Collison, a woman who was so much more than just a housekeeper. She was a deeply trusted confidant of the Spencer family for many decades. Violet had watched Diana transform from a somewhat shy young girl into literally the most famous woman on the planet. And these personal letters truly reflected that whole journey. Unlike the official palace documents, which are always so carefully crafted and polished, these letters were completely raw and incredibly personal. They really captured the emotional rollercoaster of Diana's entire life, especially her intense struggles with royal expectations. They detailed the overwhelming chaos of planning a royal wedding watched by millions and, most importantly, the incredible highs and lows of motherhood. One especially charming letter was dated July 8, 1981. Written just weeks before her big wedding to Prince Charles, it painted a vivid picture of a young bride-to-be totally caught in a storm of last-minute wedding preparations. And yet, despite all the frenzy happening around her, Diana's words had a wonderfully playful, light-hearted tone. She wrote, "Everyone's racing around here, fixing up last-minute stuff, but the bride's keeping her cool." This small remark really hinted at the warmth and relatability that made her so deeply beloved by everyone. But as the years went on, her letters took on a much more serious tone. That carefree excitement of being a young princess slowly gave way to deeper emotions, frustration, genuine concern, and above all, an unshakable devotion to her two sons. What made these letters so truly extraordinary wasn't just the words Diana wrote, but the powerful emotions simmering just behind them. They revealed a mother who was constantly thinking about her children's happiness, their well-being, and what their future would hold. Even though the world had seen Diana through countless photographs, documentaries, and those dramatic television interviews, these handwritten messages offered something entirely different. They were never meant for the public eye. They were quiet, personal, and deeply intimate. They were proof of just how desperately she wanted her sons to grow up, filled with kindness and real compassion, something that was often so difficult to hold on to inside the palace walls. And one particularly touching letter dated June 21st, 1989, captured this sentiment perfectly. It was written on official Kensington Palace stationery and addressed to a Sergeant George Plum of the Special Escort Group. She was thanking him for organising a motorbike display for Prince William's 7th birthday party. Diana's heartfelt gratitude was obvious when she wrote, "It was so very nice of you and your team to come here today for William's birthday. I really can't even begin to tell you how much joy that show brought to all of those little kids and their moms." But what made this particular letter even more special is that it wasn't just signed by Diana alone. right beside her name were the small, eager scribbles of both William and Harry. It offered a rare glimpse into a simple, truly happy family moment, something far away from the constant glare of media scrutiny. For anyone who followed Diana's life story, these letters were so much more than just sentimental keepsakes. They completely reignited conversations about her complicated relationship with the royal family and her fierce determination to raise her sons in a totally different way. Unlike all the generations before her, where royal children were typically raised with strict formality and very little direct parental contact, Diana completely shattered the mould. She was determined that William and Harry would have a childhood that actually felt real, one filled with the same experiences that ordinary kids had. According to her former royal bodyguard, Ken Worf, Diana made a very deliberate effort to show them the real world that existed beyond the palace gates. She took them to amusement parks, she let them eat at fast food restaurants, and she even rode on public buses with them, and this was not some kind of publicity stunt. She did it because she genuinely wanted them to understand what life was like outside of royalty. But was Princess Diana really the mother who ensured her sons never lost touch with the real world? Let's take a closer look at Diana's fierce protection of her children. Princess Diana wasn't simply a royal figurehead. She was first and foremost a devoted mother who desperately wanted her sons, William and Harry, to have experiences far beyond the palace walls. She firmly believed that even with their royal status, they needed to know what life was truly like for ordinary kids. So Diana made it a priority to take them on outings where they could actually interact with people from all walks of life, making sure they wouldn't grow up in a bubble of royal privilege. At the very same time, she was fiercely protective of her boys, knowing all about the relentless media pressure. She worked with palace aides to schedule official photo opportunities, giving the public a carefully curated look at key moments in her children's lives, like their first day at school or on family vacations. But the deal was in return she demanded privacy fighting to shield them from the constant glare that came with royal life. It was an incredibly delicate balancing act, feeding the press just enough to satisfy public curiosity while fiercely guarding her son's right to have a somewhat normal childhood. Andrew Morton, in his book Diana, Her True Story, revealed just how deeply she battled the media's constant intrusion. She had lived under that brutal spotlight and knew the damage it could do, especially to a child. So, her letters about William were not just simple updates. They were genuine glimpses into a mother's deep affection, a record of her mission to prepare him for his future while protecting him from its cruelest realities. By the time these letters came to light at an auction in 2004, William was no longer a boy. He was a young man attending university, clearly carrying forward the important lessons his mother had instilled in him. The letters, packed with maternal pride and wisdom, offered a much deeper insight into the prince's character, showing how Diana's influence had shaped him. This all came at a time when the world was still mourning her loss, just 7 years after her tragic death. The monarchy itself was still grappling with the huge changes she had set in motion, and William's growing public presence led many to see him as Diana's emotional heir. But these letters were so much more than simple historical artifacts. They were a painful reminder of what the world had lost. Diana never got to see her sons grow up and become adults. She never got to see them build their own families or champion the very causes she would have been so proud of. Yet through these handwritten letters her voice lived on, not in carefully prepared speeches or stiff formal appearances, but in her very own words, full of incredible warmth and sincerity. What started as an auction quickly became something much more meaningful. These rediscovered letters allowed the public to feel Diana's presence once more. They truly revealed her deep, unwavering love for William. But Diana's legacy as a mother wasn't just found in letters or photographs. It was really about the choices she made every single day. Some of those choices were incredibly bold. Some were quiet acts of rebellion against royal tradition. But at the very heart of it all was one simple truth. Before William and Harry became global figures, they were simply two young boys who had an extraordinary mother. And Diana understood that with all their privilege came immense pressure, and right from the very start she was determined to give them far more than just titles. Did her children's upbringing instill character, compassion, and a connection to the world outside the palace walls? Let's explore Diana's unique parenting style. On June 21st, 1982, Princess Diana became a mother for the very first time when she gave birth to Prince William. At just 20 years old, her shift into motherhood was instant and profoundly transformative. This wasn't just some role she accepted. It was a personal mission she embraced with her entire heart. Unlike other royal mothers who typically followed very strict traditions, Diana chose to do things her own way. She never wanted to be a distant figure in her children's lives. She was determined to be there for them in every single way possible. She shattered royal norms by breastfeeding William, a personal choice that had been almost unheard of for generations of royals. She even chose his name herself instead of letting the palace decide. More importantly, she resisted the long-standing tradition that royal nannies should be the ones to do most of the parenting. Diana was absolutely determined to be a hands-on mother, not simply a royal figurehead. Her absolute devotion became even clearer when just weeks after William was born, Prince Charles had to travel to Australia. By tradition, royal children were always left behind in the care of staff. But Diana absolutely refused to leave her newborn son. She brought William with them, sending a crystal-clear message. No royal duty was more important than being there for her child. And as William grew older, Diana continued to shatter expectations. Instead of hiring private tutors for palace lessons like past royal children, she enrolled him in a local nursery school near Kensington Palace. Other parents and onlookers were often completely stunned to see a princess personally dropping off and picking up her son, a sight that was basically unheard of in royal history. This was more than a small act of independence. It was a quiet revolution in royal parenting. But Diana's crusade to give her children a semblance of a normal life didn't stop there. She made sure William and his younger brother Harry saw the real world beyond the palace walls. Their childhood wasn't only about grand banquets and stuffy royal engagements. It was filled with the everyday moments that any regular child would truly cherish. She took them to McDonald's not because she was a big fan of fast food, but because she wanted them to experience what normal kids got to do. She would take them on the London Underground and let them run wild at theme parks. She surrounded them with people who didn't curtsy or call them by formal titles. These outings weren't random, they were carefully planned lessons in life. Diana desperately wanted her sons to see life from every angle, to truly understand the world beyond their gilded cage. According to her one-time protection officer, a man named Ken Wharf, she would meticulously plan these trips, picking the quietest times and using minimal security. She even wore simple disguises to blend in with the public. She wasn't simply giving them a childhood, she was teaching them compassion, a lesson that would define the men they would become. Her passion for instilling empathy became even more apparent when she introduced her sons to her charity work. In one incredibly powerful moment, she took William with her to visit Centrepoint, a charity that helps young homeless people on the streets of London. There he met kids who grew up without families, without an education, and without a roof over their heads. For Diana, this wasn't just about showing William how other people struggled. It was about ensuring he grasped the responsibility of his privilege, which she taught through love, her defiance of old traditions, and her absolute commitment to her kids. Diana didn't merely change the rules on how to raise royal children. She completely rewrote the entire book. So, just how close was Princess Diana to her children? Let's dive into the unbreakable bond between Diana, William, and Harry. By the early 1990s, Diana's marriage to Prince Charles was in ruins, and the whole world was watching it all fall apart. But through the chaos and media frenzy, personal heartbreak and palace drama, Diana found her sanctuary in one place with her sons William and Harry. More than ever before, she poured all of her energy into raising them, determined to protect them from the storm that was raging around her own life. Diana made very specific parenting choices that would mould her boys for years. She hand-picked schools that would protect their privacy and also focus on their emotional health, settling on Wetherby School and Ludgrove, both known for their supportive environments. But she didn't just drop them off at the gates. She worked hand in hand with school staff to make sure that at least inside the school walls, William and Harry could have some sense of a normal life. When Charles and Diana formally separated in 1992, co-parenting in the public eye became a huge challenge. Still, Diana stayed incredibly involved in her sons' everyday lives. She never missed a school event, cheered them on from the sidelines on sports days, and always wrote personal thank you notes to their teachers. Small gestures that revealed so much about her deep dedication. Many of these handwritten notes have popped up at auctions since serving as real proof of a mother who never let royal duty eclipse her parental role. By 1995, Diana sat down for that now infamous television interview with journalist Martin Bashir, as over 22 million people watched the world finally saw the massive cracks in the royal family's facade. But even then, Diana's main priority was clear: her boys. She talked openly about raising them with kindness, love, and strength, putting emotional intelligence way above stuffy royal protocol. It was an astonishingly brave moment, a princess choosing humanity over tradition. Not long after that interview aired, Queen Elizabeth II urged Diana to finalise the divorce, a clear signal that the royal family had officially reached its breaking point. Her former butler, Paul Burrell, said Diana was absolutely devastated. She felt like she was being totally pushed out, her side of the story ignored. But even as the palace walls seemed to close in, she found comfort in her sons. William and Harry were her rock, the one constant force that kept her standing through the entire storm. After the divorce became final on August 28, 1996, Diana lost her title of Her Royal Highness, a formality that wounded her deeply, not for any political reason, but for something much more personal. Without that title, royal rules meant that one day she would have to curtsy to her own children. When she told William this, his reply was both simple and deeply touching. The 14-year-old prince reportedly comforted her, saying, "Don't you worry, Mummy. I'll give it back to you one day when I'm king." While William has never confirmed this himself, the story shows the profound respect and love between them, with her official royal duties now a thing of the past. Diana threw her energy into the causes she championed: homelessness, HIV awareness, and the global fight against landmines. She was no longer a representative of the monarchy, she was now representing her own personal values. And even as she backed away from the spotlight, she never stopped writing notes to friends and staff. And in almost every single letter she wrote, one topic was always present: her boys. She would write about William's incredible kindness, Harry's non-stop energy, and all of her greatest hopes for their futures. She worried about the immense pressure they would eventually face, praying they would grow into men with integrity and their own minds. Diana had come to realise she couldn't control the future, but she could definitely help shape it. Through her love, her choices and her words, she gave her sons what the royal family couldn't: empathy, courage, and the simple strength to be their own men. Her style of mothering had nothing to do with royal duty or old traditions. It was about being present, truly listening and loving them in a way that felt real and constant. She tucked them into bed at night, sent them personal letters, and always spoke the truth, even when it was painful, especially about her separation from Charles. In 1992, the official separation of Princess Diana and Prince Charles was announced, and it was a huge turning point for her. After that, the atmosphere inside Kensington Palace changed forever, and while she no longer shared a home with Prince Charles, her main duty as a mother to William and Harry was still her number one priority. In fact, she became even more committed to giving them all the emotional support they needed. At that point, William was only 10 years old and Harry was just 8, which meant their need for a stable home life was more critical than ever. Diana really took charge of their day-to-day lives, staying completely involved in their school routines and all of their weekend plans. While the world watched the royal marriage completely fall apart, Diana started to talk about her own personal struggles. One of the most stunning moments happened on June 29, 1994, when Prince Charles admitted on national television that he had been unfaithful. Not even a year later, on November 20, 1995, Diana fired back in her own way with that bombshell BBC Panorama interview. During the 38-minute show, she was brutally honest about the immense challenges of being a royal. She talked about her mental health battles and her profound loneliness. But what really hit home with people was when she spoke from the heart about her children. She explained her deep desire for William and Harry to be raised with emotional intelligence, not just the usual stiff royal training. She desperately wanted them to understand the real feelings and everyday lives of ordinary people. Her words struck a nerve, reaching over 22 million viewers just in the UK. Diana's shocking honesty had massive consequences inside the royal family. The reaction from the palace was incredibly swift and decisive. Queen Elizabeth II, after meeting with her key advisors, which included the Archbishop of Canterbury and even the Prime Minister, sent official letters to both Diana and Charles, strongly encouraging them to move forward with a divorce. According to royal insiders like biographers Tina Brown and Sally Bedell Smith, Diana was absolutely heartbroken by this decision. Her old butler, Paul Burrell, later said that she had really been hoping for more time, not a total break from the royal family. But the divorce process went ahead. After months of intense negotiations over money, property and custody, it was finalised on August 28, 1996. And with that divorce came some major changes to Diana's official status. She was allowed to keep the title Princess of Wales, but she lost the formal styling of Her Royal Highness. Technically, this meant she would now have to curtsy to her own ex-husband, her sons, and other high-ranking royals. Now, this might sound like just a formality, but for Diana, it was deeply symbolic. She felt it was the final rejection, a door being slammed shut forever. Paul Burrell shared a very emotional story about a time when Diana opened up to her oldest son, William. The 14-year-old prince saw how upset his mother was and reportedly tried to comfort her, saying, "Don't worry, Mommy. I'll give it back to you someday when I'm the king." Now, the palace has never officially confirmed this conversation ever happened, but it remains one of the most touching stories about the incredible bond between Diana and William. After stepping away from her royal duties, Diana fully embraced a brand new chapter in her life, one defined by her own personal values, not by rigid royal protocol. She dropped over 100 royal patronages, choosing instead to focus on a handful of causes that really mattered deeply to her. These included Centrepoint and Great Ormond Street Hospital, the Royal Marsden Hospital, the National AIDS Trust, and the Leprosy Mission. And even though she wasn't a working royal anymore, her commitment to humanitarian work became even stronger. Even though she was officially out of the royal family, Diana's number one priority was always her two sons. She planned her entire life around their school schedules and showed up for parent-teacher meetings. And she stayed very involved in how they were raised. Both school staff and her close friends said she was a deeply engaged and loving mother who you could always get a hold of. But this time in her life was also defined by an ever-growing sense of complete isolation. Without the royal security detail and the official support system she was used to, she frequently felt incredibly vulnerable and exposed. In some of her private letters and notes, which were later revealed by Paul Burrell, Diana actually expressed deep fears for her own safety. One truly chilling letter from October 1995 read, "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury, and while the letter's authenticity has actually been confirmed, its contents remain hugely controversial. But whether her fears were real or not, they show us a woman who felt she was always being watched and was deeply, deeply afraid. But even with all that pressure, Diana never backed down from her mission to make a real difference. In January 1997, she flew to Angola with the International Red Cross to fight against landmines. Those photos of her in protective gear walking through a cleared minefield became the most powerful and lasting images of her final years. It was a stunning display of her bravery and her belief that she had to use her fame to highlight global problems. And throughout her last few months, Diana stayed focused on preparing William and Harry for the future, teaching them that leadership wasn't about power, but the chance to serve others. Close friends and advisors still talk about how she instilled a sense of duty in William that was built on compassion. When she talked about her humanitarian work, she would often tell him, "Use your position to help those who have no voice." Heartbreakingly, that future never came to be. On August 31st, 1997, Diana's life was tragically cut short in a horrific Paris car crash. The world watched shocked as William, just 15, and Harry, only 12, walked behind her coffin, their faces filled with grief. Yet even after her death, Diana's impact on her sons was absolutely undeniable. What do you make of the shocking revelation from this letter written by Princess Diana to her son, Prince William? Tell us what you think down in the comments section, and please remember to like and subscribe